Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I'm joined by the amazing Tanner Mcgarr. How you doing today, man?
Good, doing good. Glad to be here. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm glad we could finally make this connection. It seemed like every time we tried to do it, life happened in some way or another. Before we get into why we're here, Tanner, I want to talk about you a little bit. For those of you that don't know, Tanner is a student filmmaker who has worked on several horror films since 2019. He has a passion for the genre and a drive to tell stories. Currently living in Denver, Colorado. I remember when that was the home of Carmelo Anthony, when he was balling out there. Now, you will be moving to Los Angeles in the coming months. Now, before we talk about the move, I want to talk a little bit about Beware the Woods. What can you tell us about that?
So Beware the Woods is a slasher movie I directed way back in 2019 that has finally been released this year on DVD. This is her right here. This is the old lady. She's the killer. So you can get it on DVD on Screamtime Films or like any other place you buy DVDs online. It'll be hitting streaming soon, but I think it's a low budget horror movie. The best way to watch it is, of course, going to be on DVD. And the plot is just pretty straightforward. A bunch of young adults go camping in the woods, and stuff just doesn't go their way, you know.
Well, and the good thing about this being out on physical media is, one, you can have it in your hands, and two, you don't have to go searching for it because I have the links for it right down here in the description. So all you got to do is click the links down here in the description. Make sure you're getting yourself a copy of that. Now, the way that you and I met, you are part of the upcoming Jammin Dead. Now, obviously, spoiler free. What can you tell us about Jammin Dead that people may have forgotten or may not know if they hadn't watched the Indiegogo video?
So Jammin Dead is yet another fine example of why not go camping in the woods. It's an upcoming slasher battle royale that's currently funding on Indiegogo, right? I believe when this comes out, it'll still be funding. So you could go support and be a part of it right now. We're going to be shooting it this summer, and we've like choreographed all the fights. There's just like chainsaws and machetes and gardening and shears, and it's a really fun time. I think you should check that one out too. There's even a perk on the new Indiegogo where you could get a Jammin Dead and Beware of the Woods DVD. So it's a pretty good deal.
And you guys know where to look for that link because it's right down here in the description. So make sure you guys are checking this stuff out. And like I said, when you are supporting these films and these indie filmmakers, you're not only helping to make these movies possible, but you're getting the perks back in return. Now, we're not doing it for the perks. I understand that, but it definitely is a perk to helping out. And you're helping these people that have put their life, their heart, their soul, their blood, sweat, and tears into these scripts and into these films that they're trying to make. And being a part of that is just super special. So if you guys can, I have the link right down here in the description so you can be a part of that. If you don't want any perks, you just want to support, you can do that too. Every little bit goes a long way helping indie film be made. So the move to Los Angeles is coming soon. What sparked that move?
Well, two things. College, and obviously filmmaking is my passion and I want to pursue it. And I know some people have made it in Denver, Colorado, but I want to like grow bigger than what the film community around here, film industry around here. And California is the place to go. So I'm going to go there for college. I love California too. It's on the coast, it's pretty, palm trees, and pursue film.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot different than Denver, Colorado, for sure, when it comes to the scenery and such.
Yeah, getting a little tired of snow.
I'm in Michigan, brother. I totally understand. So not only do I have the links down here in the description for that, but I also have Tanner's social media links. So like I said, make sure you're clicking these links, follow him on social media so you can stay up to date, not only on everything he's doing, he's got the move, so he's going to have a lot more projects coming up here in the future, and you can stay updated on everything Jammin Dead. So in order to be a horror filmmaker and be influential in the horror genre, Tanner, it had to start somewhere for you. You know, you had to watch your first horror movie at some point. So I want to go back to the past and talk about what you got started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. And Tanner, your first horror movie was?
The 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
And funny enough, this is the first time I have talked about that movie on this channel. So I'm very, very excited to dive headfirst into this film. So do you remember about how old you were the first time you had seen it?
I think I saw it the year it came out. So 2010, I would have been about like 6.
God, I'm old as shit. So man, this is definitely a very, very controversial film. You know, you either love this film or you hate this film. I've never heard very many in betweens, so I can't say too much about my personal feelings on this film because we just filmed an episode of Versus where we'll be comparing the original versus the remake of A Nightmare on Elm Street, 84 versus 2010. And I can say, after going in and rewatching this with an open mind, some of my opinions and views have changed on what this film means to me. So, do you remember who you were with when you watched it?
Yes. So the person who really got me into horror was my dad, because he's been a big horror fan since forever. He saw like the original Halloween in theaters and whatnot. And so he just decided one night we were actually watched The Thing first. We tried watching John Carpenter's The Thing, and I don't recall this, but apparently little me was a bit too scared of that. So we switched to A Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which I guess was just okay with me. I don't. And that was the origin. We were in the living room. I think we had like a tent pitched up in the living room of all things, and we just decided to start watching it because he wanted to get me into horror movies, and I liked it. So, and here we are. Got clown masks, and there's Jason, and so.
It's so rad, man, because that's how I am with my kids. You know, like my daughter, my middle child, she's not about it. You know, she likes Chucky. That's about it. My youngest daughter is all horror all the time. My oldest son is like, I like it. It is what it is, you know. So it's fun to know that you had a father that wanted to influence you, but let you build your own path as well. So, one thing I can say about the Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 remake is there is a lot of intense scenery in the film. Do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
Probably right off the bat, that diner scene where he's slitting, spoilers, he's slitting his own throat. I remember distinctly, I remember that scene from initially watching it because, like, you know, when you're young, you don't really see people kill themselves like that.
Yeah.
And then I also remember when they do the flashback to Freddie getting burnt. I remember that one pretty well, especially because the actor, I'm blanking on his name for Freddie, just kept making these really weird, desperate squeals all the time. I remember that really.
Jackie Earle Haley.
Jackie Earle Haley, yes. So those two scenes, I don't remember why. Upon rewatch, I think definitely the first one just because it was like, oh, brutal, and probably the second one too.
It's one of those things where when you have that first one, you know, he's got you're not real, and then it's like it's not like he just slices his throat. He shoves it in and like completely annihilates himself on it. So that's another one that I'm just like every time I watch that scene, I'm like, wow, because he really obviously it's Freddie getting him, but
yeah,
I love how he's you're not real and I am now. And then he does it like so. I love that shit. That's such a good scene.
Yeah, that scene. There's some good parts in this one. I definitely know of the controversy, and I guess we don't have to get into it if you're doing a video, but it's interesting comparing it to the originals, and I don't know. We can get into it later, but
yeah, and there's a lot of very similar scenes between the remake and the original, and I think that's part of the big problem that people have with it is you have these amazing scenes that are done really well practically in 1984, and then they take them and try to do them with CGI now in this one. And I think that's really what rubbed people the wrong way. We just talked about, you know, the diner scene, which is one of those really intense scenes. But and obviously that's the one that affected you the most. That and Freddie being burned alive. But what would you say your favorite scene from Nightmare Remake was?
I guess that's tough. What was my favorite part of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake? I mean, I do like the diner scene because it is brutal and it's got a kind of fun, moody atmosphere. And also, like when he does get burnt, I kind of like it because it almost makes you feel bad for Freddie, even though you'll soon not feel bad for him afterwards. I don't know, something about the performance in that one just kind of makes you feel bad in a way. I'm like, I don't know, something interesting about it. It's definitely not my favorite movie, but
right.
I would still say those two scenes are the ones, even after I rewatched it. I don't know if I said this on the podcast yet, but I did rewatch it recently. Even after rewatching it, those two really stick out to me. I mean, there's small things I kind of recall. Like, I don't think Robert Englund did this when he like hits his fingers to create like a little scissoring noise. I really thought that was cool. That stood out. Also, if you play Dead by Daylight, you hear that all the time because he does it in that game.
Right. Well, and something else you just brought up too, my favorite aspect of this movie is the thought that he may be innocent for a lot of this movie, that he was just, wrong place, wrong time type. Obviously, that turns out to not be the case. But you definitely have that spot where you're like, man, maybe he was an innocent guy and they killed him for no reason, and that's why he's coming back. So I do like that idea that they played with. I wish they would have ran with that a little bit more with this film.
Yeah, that's like a thing I really noticed with this one. And maybe in retrospective, like I like A Nightmare on Elm Street. I have a poster of it over there. But I would never say it was like one of my favorite horror franchises. I'm really much like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Friday the 13th, Children of the Corn type of guy. And I think that why that is because like a lot of those killers are almost victims of circumstance in a way. Like they're killers, but I don't think they ever intended to be like evil from the get-go. Well, Freddy Krueger, he's just kind of a bastard in general. Before he becomes Freddy Krueger, like even in the originals, he was a child killer and whatnot. And I think a lot of people almost not we in the horror community have a weird way of just like, oh yeah, he kills people, so what? I still love him. And I think that's because Robert Englund is just too charming to like hate, right? But I think this movie really reveals like, wow, Freddy Krueger is just not a good person. They like obviously they dial up the notch in some places. And I always feel like that might have been what people didn't like about this one is like, wow, I really don't like Freddy in this. He's just, he's a really bad, like he was a bad person in the originals, but like Robert Englund is just too charming running around and laughing to really get mad at him.
I think that's a big thing too. We're like, listen, if you want to kill the kid, that's fine. But sexual assault, no way.
That's how horror fans are. No.
Right.
Kill all the teenagers you want.
Yeah, just don't touch them.
Gets even worse towards the end because he makes like all those comments to Nancy as he's like lifting up her skirt. I'm like, wow, this Freddy needs to die.
What do you want to play now? Fuck you. Sounds fun. Oh God, you dirty bastard.
I know.
To say, like, that's what I try to explain to people is Jackie Earle Haley did something as Freddy Krueger that Robert Englund could never ever do. Yeah. And that's make us hate the bad guy. We're like you said, we're not supposed to like Freddy. And I think a big thing is that's how I felt. I was like, oh, I didn't like this movie because Freddy was a douche. And I thought, you think about it, and you're like, man, he's supposed to be. He's a fucking child killer, man. Like, and Jackie Earle Haley did the job. He was dark. He was evil. You hated him. He played the role like he should have been played. And now, look, I'm not bashing Robert Englund. He is God to me. Like, he's the dream meat for me. But it's at the same time, it's like he was so charismatic that you couldn't hate the guy. You watch these movies and you're like, okay, let's do it. Yeah, kill him, Freddy. Fuck those kids. But now you're like, no, what? No, fuck, gross, dude, nasty. So I definitely get where you're coming from. And what's funny is this movie is now 12 years old, and there have been talks about doing another Nightmare on Elm Street remake. Is that something you would like to see done again?
It's so interesting. I feel like a lot of the franchises right now, like Friday the 13th caught up in lawsuits, Halloween's still making movies, Texas is making movies, Chucky has a show. I really feel like they just like forget about Nightmare on Elm Street because like there's no, as far as I know, there's no legal things holding it back. They've just decided, meh. And that remake you talk about, I'm still in like development hell. I don't even think they have a script for it. Like, I would be interested in it. I'd like them to take a very different approach. People also probably wouldn't like where they really, really try and make it feel like dream atmosphere. Like there's a lot of games that have kind of been like that where you're like, this doesn't quite feel like reality, Because this remake definitely tried to keep up with the dark, gritty slasher of the original and copied a lot of scenes. I love they just took the ball and completely threw it, trying to like do something super duper different with it. But at the same time, like I'm way more of a make a sequel, not a remake or reboot type of guy. And like Robert Englund is always like, oh yeah, I could do it one more time. So I think they should just let him do it one more time. Like just do like don't do a legacy sequel, but like do another like post Freddy versus Jason, Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger movie. That's what I'd be most down for. But I mean, if they do a remake, I'd like to see them make it very different.
If they do a remake, I'd go see it anyway. No matter what, I'd go see it. And you're right, it's weird because look at the money Halloween just made. Look at the money Scream 2022 just made. Look at what X just brought in. So horror is still making money. So the fact that they're not trying to again, and I would rather them make new Nightmare on Elm Street movie as a passion project, not a money grab, but just give me another Freddy movie. Like I don't care what it is. I love Freddy. Give me another Freddy movie. So
he's been dormant for such a long time. Also makes you think about. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's just weird, like you said, for him to be dead for 12 years while everybody else is striving. Jason, we understand why he's laying dormant. But Ghostface, Michael, like they're out there making money right now.
Yeah, and it's strange. It made me think back to like some franchises that really don't get any sequels, like even earlier, like Sleepaway Camp, is it Prom Night, stuff like that. It makes me think of a lot of other dead franchises. And it's like interesting. I wonder like why no one picks up these ones anymore. Hills Have Eyes. It's interesting which ones have been picked up and which ones haven't.
I mean, I'm hoping that X will start this new wave of original horror movies, though. Like that's really what I'm hoping, because X just showed that you could take an original idea, make it, and still make money. You don't have to make the money off the horror villain's name. You can make the money off a decent script with great actors and actresses. So I'm very excited to see if we can get a new wave of original horror movies coming out through Hollywood, not just through the indie scene. So we talked about your first horror movie being A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 and what that meant to you. But now I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here, Tanner. My little buddy Ghostface has a question for you. What's your favorite scary movie, Tanner? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
I would have to go. I mentioned it earlier. I would have to go with the 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't think there's another horror movie that has influenced how like my style of horror more than that one, and that one just kind of a perfect storm of stuff I really like. I love, I kind of live in more I live in Colorado near Denver, but I kind of live in more of a countryside type place, like cornfields and all that stuff is how I grew up, and I just love the characters. I love chainsaws for some reason, and I have so much Leatherface stuff around here, and I actually met Gunnar Hansen too, before he passed away. Yeah. I don't know. That movie is just a perfect storm for me. It's definitely my favorite, but I also I like Get Out a lot. Children of the Corn. I've recently gotten into Ringu. And this one I don't see a lot of people talk about, but I really like the Silent Hill movie.
I respect it, man. It's just one of those things where I wanted to. Same thing with Resident Evil. Like I look at that, like I look at Starbucks. Like I want to like this so bad. But every time I taste it, it doesn't taste good to me. And that's how I feel about Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Like I try them and I want to like them so bad. And I'm even taking my love of those video games completely out of it. I just didn't dig them, man. But like I said, I'm one of those people where if someone's making art, I really hope there's someone out there enjoying it. So I'm really glad that you get enjoyment out of those films.
Yeah, I do. And I do play the games. I love the Resident Evil games. Resident Evil 4. But
that's so funny because I joined a buddy of mine, Flet Lives, on his channel, and we talked about our top 10 favorite horror video games of all time. And mine wasn't on anybody else's list, and it's Silent Hill 4, The Room. Oh, yeah. I love that game. I think that game is so powerful and so great. And I think that would be a great 10 episode series on Netflix or Prime. I think that would just be an amazing. You couldn't do that in a single film. It had to be an episodic thing, but I think The Room would be fantastic.
I mean, this is so off subject, but there's another franchise that's been dormant for a bit too long, and that's Silent Hill. Where's our Silent Hill stuff? People still really want it. I mean, you remember the Silent Hills demo, but there's been nothing, no movies, shows, or games.
Was that the one with where Norman Reedus? Wasn't Norman Reedus?
The L hallway, and everyone was so happy for it, But yeah, that's another franchise. It's like, why don't we have more Silent Hills?
It's gonna sell. You're gonna make money on it as long as you put out a quality product. The name alone is gonna sell.
Oh yeah, I mean, Resident Evil's proven it.
Exactly. So
all these years later.
Yeah, and I just replayed Resident Evil 1 and 2. We did the newer versions on PlayStation 5, getting those reboots or whatever they called them, and I had so much fun with those, man. It was like I was a kid again playing these games, and I just had so much fun.
Oh yeah.
So I want to go back to Nightmare real quick. We're going to talk about this movie, but we're going to rank it on a skull count. Now, what we're doing, Tanner, we're not ranking it on production, quality, direction, none of that. We're not being critics here. What we're doing is strictly judging Nightmare on Elm Street 2010 on how much it affected you on first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. What would your ranking of A Nightmare on Elm Street be?
Maybe like 4.5. And here's why. Because it was the first movie I watched, and it was slasher. And slasher was the big first horror subgenre I really got into. It's my favorite subgenre. But I won't say it wasn't until a year later when I watched on TV, they were doing a marathon of all the Friday the 13th movies that I really got into it. So it was impactful in the way like I do remember it, but it wasn't enough impactful that it's not what sent me truly into like, yeah, I want to watch all of these.
And that's a very fair assessment. If you would have watched the original, it would have done that for you. No, I'm just messing with you. So, and I will say this about the Nightmare remake, and everybody can say what they want. The ending of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake with Freddie coming through the mirror and getting the mom and taking her back into the mirror is a way better ending than the Nightmare on Elm Street original. I fucking hate ending to the original, that stupid fucking Freddie car and the blow up doll mom getting pulled into the house. Like, I hate that shit so much.
I really like, I guess I haven't watched a whole lot of behind the scenes stuff, but I really wonder what their idea was behind it. And then he pulls her through the small window.
Like, from what I've heard, it was Bob Shea. It was a money grab as a sequel setup, which is really funny because Nightmare 2 has nothing to do with that ending. So I wish that they would have just ended it with the mom and Freddie being burned on the waterbed and Nancy like just walking outside, maybe, and like, it's over type thing. I would much rather that, than what they did. And like I said, I've said numerous times, and people watch this like, oh, here he goes again. I think that there's no such thing as a perfect horror movie, but the closest thing I've ever seen is the original Nightmare on Elm Street. If you take out that ending, I think that's legit the perfect horror movie. You got the amazing villain, you got an amazing cast, you got phenomenal kills. The cinematography is great. The practical effects in that movie are top notch. It's the perfect horror film to me until the last 2.5 minutes. And I'm like, what was this shit?
There's always many flaws. I mean, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I can't think of any flaws off the top of my head.
Franklin.
Yeah, a lot of people say Franklin. I mean, I think it's true to life. They're just kind of people like that who you just don't like. I don't know. There's one point you can tell it's definitely not Marilyn Burns playing Sally when she like jumps out the window.
Jumps out the window?
Yeah. I mean, it's true. There's no perfect movie, obviously, but for the most part, I don't have many issues with that one.
Like I will say, I do disagree with you in the fact that I think there's one perfect movie that's ever been made. Peanut Gallery, you got 3 seconds. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That's Pee-wee's Big Adventure to me is the absolute perfect movie. Everybody that's watched this is like, fuck. Now he's talking about the nightmare. If you're playing Sledgehammer Bingo, you probably hit bingo a couple times. I've talked about the nightmare ending, and now I've talked about Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So, if you're playing Sledgehammer Bingo, or if you're doing a shot game, you're probably dead by now because I've talked about these things so many different times.
Something tells me you're a big fan of the 80s. Nightmare, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Dude, no, like Pee-wee, that was my shit. I've when I was a kid, I rented that movie so much from my family's video store. I literally wore the tape out on Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah. Like it's just one of those films that I think if I watched it now, as an adult, and I really went into it as like a critical thing, I could probably find a bunch of shit wrong with it. But I really think that was Tim Burton at his best. Like, it's funny. There's really some horror elements to it. Yeah. The cinematography just looks so good. So to me, it's just the perfect movie.
Oh, no, I get that. There's some stuff where you're like, it's perfect. I don't want to hear anything else. It's perfect.
That's me with Pee-wee, man.
I definitely get that.
We are at the end of the third act, guys. The credits are about to roll. So I do want to remind you one last time. Make sure you're clicking these social media links. Click the links for the Indiegogo. Wow, that's a hard one to say altogether. And then make sure you're also clicking the links for the movie so you can check out the DVD copy of that. So always better to have physical media in your hands. So Tanner, don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.